next?
Joyce. And I'll look at, make sure everybody's on there.
Okay, we live? All right, great.
The computer says we're live, but I don't see it yet.
All right, double check it.
We're live.
You good?
Should be good.
You good?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Like I said earlier, before we get started, make sure you speak slowly into the mic. This is Arvin City Council. Today is December 21st, 2020. This is committee meetings. And the first up is street sidewalks and lighting. Mr. Gray.
All right. 21st, 2020. It is 6:05 p.m. at the Active Adult Center. All committee members are present. All council members are present and guests noted on my sheet. There is no current request for legislation. However, we do have there is no request for legislation. However, we have two current pieces of legislation. The first piece of legislation is ordinance number 161, 2020, titled Authorized Payment, City of Akron. If you recall, this is the payment for the cost over estimate that we owed to the city of Akron for the construction project on Roman Road. The difference was from concrete. Our estimate was on asphalt, they put in concrete, so that's what this ordinance is about. Is there any questions about this piece of legislation? Second ordinance, the current ordinance is ordinance number 162-2020, titled Entering the Contact GPD Group. This is the annual contract for GPD, for engineering services through GPD Group for miscellaneous engineering stuff. They also help with grant writing and statistically millions of dollars. They've helped us get millions of dollars with the little money that we did get. So is there any questions about this piece of legislation? Ms. Andoff?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to thank Greg Tracy for sending this breakdown over of looking into a city engineer versus not having one. And I really appreciate that. That had a lot of useful information on there, and I understand totally. Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. Is there any other questions about this piece of legislation? All right. Miscellaneous discussion. I have none. Is there any miscellaneous discussion from committee? Any miscellaneous discussion from council members? Mr. Taylor?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say thank you to Mr. Tracy. 2020, you've done an awesome job as a service director. To the street department guys, and water department guys, each email I've sent to you, you've replied, each concern, you did an awesome job. And talking to the city employees, street guys, they respect you very highly. They think very highly of you, and that's awesome to see that kind of connection with the guys underneath you. And I just want to say thank you for being the spokesperson I spoke to and dealt with for this whole 2020. So thanks again. You're awesome.
Thank you very much. I feel very privileged to be in this position and serve the city of Arvin. So appreciate the comment.
Is there any other miscellaneous discussion? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Motion made by Mrs. Angeloff.
Seconded by Mrs. Fry.
Motion seconded by Mrs. Fry. And we are adjourned at 6:08 p.m.
Okay, next up is Environmental Health and Social Services with Mr. Dave.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services, meeting today at Active Adult Center, December 21st, 2020. Time is 6:09. Members present, other council members also noted, and guests. Today we have no new requested legislation. And we'll open this up to miscellaneous discussion to our members on top of the committee. And any other council members? All right, hearing none, motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
I will second that.
Mr. Heidi. And we are adjourned at 6:10. Thank you.
Okay, next up is planning, annexation, and codes. This is Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is Planning, Annexation, and Codes, December 21st. It is 6:10. All members of the committee are present, along with all council and guests as noted on my sheet. We have no new legislation to request. We have two pieces of current legislation. First one is resolution number 147, 2020, titled Amending Barberton Codified Ordinances, Chapter 670, Chapter 1422, and Chapter 1444. First reading was November 30th, second reading was December 14th. Third reading will be today. I'll open that up for any type of discussion with the committee first. No discussion? With the body? Okay. The second piece of legislation, current legislation we have this evening is resolution number 148, 2020, titled Amending Barberton Codified Ordinances, Chapter 1478, Rental Registration. First reading was November 30th, 2020. Second reading, December 14th, 2020. And tonight will be the final reading on that. Do we have any questions? Open that up to the committee first. Mr. Greer?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, I've been looking into this, and studying the numbers for the previous rental registration. I went back to 2018, 2019, and I have the 2020 budget here for the rental registration program, which is number 242 in the city budget. And I just wanted to point out that I don't know what we're looking at 2020 actual numbers for the thing, but we were only projected to have $12,000 in the rental registration fund as of December 31st, 2020. For 3 years that I went back, it looks like we're overusing this fund. It wasn't a sustainable use of the fund. We knew that for 3 years. I'm looking at the numbers. We're consistently using, I think, 90,000 out of something that only brings in 55,000. So I just wanted to bring that up, that I just seen that obviously, if we pass this, it'll help that. I'm aware of that, but I don't hate, I'm a little disappointed that we're seeing this now. All the way, we knew this from 2018, we were able to see this on the paper as a city. So I just wanted to point that out, that we waited until the last minute when we literally projected $12,000, $12,557 in that account before we actually moved on that. Today I spoke with Mr. Tracy. I asked him about the total number of rentals in the city of Barberton, along with the 20 or numbers on how many rentals pay $20, how many pay $40. And I wanted to get clarification on this, and this is more from Mr. Tracy. He showed that there was 1,139 properties registered that are currently under the $20 fee. There's 2,583 units registered under the $40 fee. The $40 fee alone is at $103,000 if we collected on all of them. That's what I was going to clarify with Mr. Tracy. That alone is at $103,320. So I don't know where the numbers on the budget over the past couple of years, if we're only projecting 55,000, 75,000, and the actuals don't even come close to this. Is this, I guess my question for Mr. Tracy and all of this is these numbers actual from prior years as well, or did they grow currently, like as we're trying to figure the system out?
Well, I can tell you this year that throughout the adjustments we've been able to make with the software and getting all the parcels accurate and following up on the audit and work that we did a couple years ago, we're slated to, we've actually already exceeded $140,000 of revenue in that department. So a lot of it depends on how the invoices hit and us following up on people that haven't paid previously.
Yeah, because that's what I was gonna say, if you have those together currently with the current numbers, the minimum budget that we should see in that is at least $126,100. And we're not seeing that in the budget. So that's why if these are new numbers,
Now, keep
it
in
would make
mind,
sense.
that's 100% compliance.
Right.
We also charge for water, sewer, sanitation, everything else, and you never see all of it. You're never gonna get 100% of everything.
So you're saying a return rate on collection is.
Right, you can't turn the rental off. It's just the same with water. Like you can turn water off and try to collect, but it's a little bit different with rental registration. You can't collect 100%. You probably won't, I guess. I shouldn't say you can't. It's possible, but the likelihood is not high. So to expect the full amount of what the potential is probably, being a little optimistic.
Yeah. I just went back 3 years and I didn't see any numbers even close to that, so that's why I was asking.
Ms. Benjamin.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I know that, like 2 years in a row, people actually called and said, why haven't I received my bill for my rental fees? And I know we were overwhelmed in the department, and a lot of people didn't get their billing as we were changing over software. So a couple of those years, we actually didn't get the bills sent out in a timely fashion because we were building this. So I know that we didn't get the money because they didn't get bills. So this has been a couple of years in the process of building. So of course we wouldn't see that revenue in that account because we just didn't get it in. And I was in the building department when asking those questions and they were telling me we didn't get them sent out yet, we didn't have enough manpower and things like that, and the program wasn't set up. So I do know that happened. And I think that was a couple of years back that was happening.
Chair, if I may, I have two other things. Just to provide some info, we all know this, but with those numbers, I plugged in what it would be if this ordinance passed. At a full 100% minimum. So that came out to around $281,080 is what that fund would collect with this passage. On the low end, I want to say.
For 2021?
Yeah, well, if this passed for the first full year of collection.
Well, the first full year of what, $20, $40, or $100? Because see,
Yeah,
you have
so it'd be
you have that
2022.
grace period until January 20th when this passes. So some of them before that will be paying their 20 and some will be paying their 40. So really the true, I don't know how,
Yeah, I don't know.
just go back on and figure, what that was. I don't know if
So I
that's a
can't hear
real
you.
true number.
I'm here, we're talking over here. Should we stop talking, let her talking, or I can hear
I
you?
don't know.
I don't know what's going on. Is everything okay over there, guys? Should we take a moment of recess, or?
I apologize, I just needed to, I just wanted to clarify something.
Okay, I couldn't hear you talking.
So, I don't know, Mr. Greer, 281,000 collected for 2021.
2022, for the first full year.
Oh, for the first $100 for
Yeah.
that, that's.
I'm not I was just pointing it out, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, that's what the number would go from theoretically 126 to 281 if we had full compliance and full.
Well, that's what will make what we're hoping to have happen, be able to
Right,
happen.
to have the
Right,
program or
and then we
whatever.
can start with a plan on what we're, what that's gonna do.
And the next thing I just wanted to mention real fast, I had a meeting a meeting with landlords, multiple like calls and texts and shit.
Right.
Yes.
And as I'm sure we all have,
Mhm.
we received the emails, but we really need, the thing that and we had emails for council members going back and forth too, and I expressed it in there that it's the follow through. We really need to follow through with this. We have to follow through with the planning of this. The money I get, we need the money to do a plan, but a plan is different than an implemented plan. A plan is free, it costs us nothing, we need to plan it.
Right, and you don't have to preach that, because I understand.
Yeah,
because
so-
This 11 years is way, way too long to be not looked at. That's why I added section M, that we shall review this November of 2022. And then that way we can look at that figure and we can see, and then it gives us the opportunity to make additional changes, maybe, look at that and go from there. This is step A, so.
Yeah, and I think we really, if I'm gonna support this, we're gonna have to put our foot down and make sure that what was said on those slides and what has been said in emails and what has been said here in council happens, or hold somebody accountable, is what I wanted to get out, so. Thank you, Chair.
Mayor, do you have anything to say?
I mean, I put those in the slides, and if you know me, you know that I don't make guarantees, I don't make promises. Because anything can happen.
Yeah.
But
we can get it
we've
on.
been examining this for quite a while. And how do we maximize our resources? How do you maximize your assets versus your liabilities, reduce your liabilities? It's pretty simple. It's just we need more resources. So, I said that I put together a much bigger plan encompassing all of the neighborhoods, whether it's owner occupied or rental. We would hire 2 additional staff members. One would be a clerk, and one would be another property maintenance inspector. So those would definitely help. And, we could use a few more inspectors, but I want to start out with that, see where we're at, and keep evaluating the program and getting feedback from not only the building department staff, but also council and landlords. And, I get calls all the time from residents, owner-occupied or tenants that give feedback. So I want to engage all of them. This would be a very positive thing, very impactful thing for Garland moving forward. I have no problem, having council overseeing and watching over this and reporting back to council. No problem at all.
We can probably use the help.
And that's what, one of the first people I talked to about this, and engaged over the time, is the building department, because they're the boots on the ground, if you will. And so they have a clear understanding of my expectations if this passes moving forward. And that's why they generated that letter, because they invite more resources so they can do their job in a more effective manner.
Thank you. Anybody else on the body? Mr. Javers?
Thank you, Chair. Earlier today, Mr. Greer and I, we met a couple landlords, a couple tenants. And tenants were worried about the rent going up. And honestly, the rent shouldn't go up, because at the end of the day, it's a tax write-off for the landlords themselves. So that's all bogus. They were gonna say the tenant, don't go up to the tenants. Their main concern is they want to see something happen. As a council member, I wish it would go up to $500 a year. That's money. I mean, it's a business. We want that. I hope it goes to $500 a year. And this way, we get it done. And it shows our future residents, future business landlords that they want to do it. As a person who's involved in rentals in the city of Barberton, in the last 10 years, 12 years, nothing's been done. So I would say I don't want this, because what have you done before? All you're doing is just money grab, taking that money from us and using it for somebody else. And money's gonna be there because it's a business and landlords have money. And you tell them, you're gonna scare them, say, no, we're gonna shut that apartment down or shut that house down. they're gonna be scared and pay it. So what they want, what we heard from earlier today is, they just want to make sure it's being done. And also, they wish this meeting was open to the public so they can come in and talk. They didn't want to do a voicemail or emails or text messages or even Zoom. They want to be there and talk. So that's what we heard. Again, we're the voices for them because they are people who elect us in here. But for us, moving for business, that's what we're here for, because to make the right decision for the city of Barberton. So for the city of Barberton, the council member, yes, you want to see that. But as a landlord, you get to hustle us for the last 10 years. You've got nothing from this. I mean, there's nothing been done. So,
Mr. Heidi?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to share some numbers. I told some people earlier, but I want to make sure everybody hears it through the microphone, so I'm going to move it closer here. Did a little research with the Bureau of Labor Statistics. In 2009, $40 would be the equivalent of $49.30 today. That is the equivalent, and this is based off the 930, not obviously inflation from one year to the next, as the 11-year whole. The equivalent would be 78 cents per month. If you take 40 divided by 12 months, that equals $3.33 a month. That is the current registration fee for a grand total of break-even point for inflation and fee of $4.11 a month. That's saying, in the past 11 years, if rent has gone up more than $4.11 a month due to inflation, what that essentially does is take buying power away from the tenant, because to keep up with inflation, keep up with fees, theoretically, it would only be $4.11 a month increase since 2009. And again, that's counting inflation today versus 11 years ago. My last point is, I have heard from landlords and I have heard from tenants, and I'm gonna have to say that you can say, I have to raise rents to cover certain registration fees. That is okay, that is part of the business. What I'm not okay with is any landlord saying, I have to raise it $10 to cover the cost, which is untrue, because if you are currently at the $40 rate, you're increasing $60, not $100. And that 60 divided by 12 is $5. So for a landlord to say, I have to raise it $5 with the excuse of, I need to cover the cost of the registration fee, is fine. Anything over that, I believe to be unethical to say. If you say $10, well, you're right, and that's if you're first time registering. A lot of these people are not first time registers. In fact, Mayor or Greg might know how many times, we add people to the registry. But to be a current landlord and say, I'm gonna raise it $10 is not true when they say it's to cover costs. If you wanna say you wanna cover costs, then you have to say $5. Or if it's the 80 divided by 12, if you're at the $20 rate, which would be $6.66 a month to cover costs, to go up from 20 to 100. But I just wanted to share those numbers because I think it's important, because people are renting, that the tenants know where their money is going and what things are happening, because they're the ones ultimately coming out of their pockets. To keep up with inflation and to keep up with $40, again, would only be $4.11 a month. So anytime it's raised, over 11 years, that $4.11 equals $542.52. If this year in 2020, rent was finally raised on you from 11 years to $50 a month, that would be a difference of $57.48 that would still go to the landlord's pocket over the fees paid plus inflation. So once again, I think the tenant is due an explanation of what the true cost is to the landlord in all situations. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for those figures, that's very interesting. Mr. Griffith?
Thank you, Mrs. Angelo. The 11 years, that we haven't had an increase, I think we're way overdue, for increase in the rental registration fee. The only problem I have with that. I know Bill says we're gonna hire inspectors, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. I have a problem with the enforcement of it. Because there's nothing rental, owner occupied. I can take you places right now tonight and it's dark. And you would be appalled, you would see like, what the heck's going on? And all this has been turned in. I'm not saying the inspectors didn't do anything, they did their job, they went out, they cited them, they did that, but after that, there's nothing. We don't get anything for this. You know, the house is still bad. If we want to improve the housing stock, you gotta walk on both sides of the street. You gotta do the rentals, you gotta do the owner occupied, you gotta put some teeth in it, you gotta go to the judges, you gotta do something. Because just raising fees and inspecting it and writing it down doesn't improve nothing. You know, but like I said, we're overdue. We didn't get our property tax levy, it fell, and PNW moved. The pandemic's here. Before the pandemic, we were still treading water, okay? So we have to do something. But what I want to see is enforcement. I want to see something that my money is doing. I want to see improvements in the neighborhood. So that's my view.
I will second that. Yep. Mrs. Copeland?
Yes, I was gonna say something to this same effect as Mr. Griffin, is that we need the support of the enforcement, that when we find these people, that we have the support to back it up, whether it's a rental property or a homeowner. And that is, it is aggravating that the harder we work at getting this, just like the case you told us about, that our inspectors, I don't know how many times that the different inspectors have said, you know, I'll go out and write it up again. The one over on Perry, that house has been nothing but a headache for 4 years, and every time we write him up, he goes down to the building department and wants to see what's her house, give me this one, and he's gonna fight back by pulling us up to see what violations we have to just get away from taking care of his property. And we need to have the support of our judges behind our guys when they go out and write these things up. What do we have to do to get that support for us, you know, raising these fees? How is that gonna help us?
Well, I think we're all on the same page that we want this enforced, and, you know, we're just not for the tenant, you know, we're anybody that votes in town, you know, we're for everybody in town, whether you're a homeowner, whether you're a renter, whether you're a landlord, if you live in town. That's another thing that you have to look at the big picture. I've had residents that said, oh my God, that's ridiculous. They only pay $40, you know? They might be living next to one that there's been violations, you know? Like I said, I've contacted the building department on repeated, same ones over and over and over again. And then you've got the resident living next to that, calling saying, you know, well, I told you about this last year and they came out and then that's it. They didn't do anything. Now I'm calling you again. Like it's, you know, like our fault, and we just pass that information. So I think one of the things that the mayor was talking about was doing like a ward area, you know, to where you would have maybe one inspection for ward, I'm just gonna say 2 and 3. And that way, with our eyes, we can help them with that, just like with the streets, you know, go up and down your streets and give your list to Mr. Tracy, so he can see, you know, what that's gonna cost. So I think too that, I think all of us together are probably, hopefully on the same page, and we do want to get this started, and we want to get this started next year. You know, some of you have only been on council for 1 year, and you've shown interest in changing things and making it better. Well, let's do it. You know, let's just go ahead and do it. That's the best thing I can say. And this is what we do first. and then we'll go on. Mr. Heidi?
Thank you, Chair. One concern I got from landlords, and I spoke with, the mayor here, and he can elaborate on that, is they want to know certain things like the paint rebate programs and all that. One in particular showed me different places that weren't rentals that were able to secure paint funds. I was unaware that that comes from a separate fund. Mr. Mayor, if you want to expound on that some?
Yeah, so there's no commingling of funds. So everything collected through rental registration goes into a separate rental registration fund that's a financing program. So if we do a paint rebate program or any rebate program, you can have one program funded by two different funds, one for general fund for owner occupied, one for rental. So when someone comes in, they say, I'm so-and-so, I want to take part in this program. This is my house, okay, is it a rental? Yes. Are you registered? So we'll make sure that's registered. If not, they'll get them registered. Then we'll do an inspection before they can take advantage of the rebate program. If it's an owner occupied, they can come in and show proof and take advantage of it. So we do have a line item for paint rebate. So we're speaking with our finance director, we want to continue that because we can use it for both. We did add the rental aspect of paint rebate just a few years ago after talking to one of the landlords. But we want to start another line item for just rebates. And that's going to be kind of based on what the property maintenance inspectors tell us. So maybe it's downspouts and gutters, maybe it's, and not just for rentals, but for paving. As they're going down the street, maybe it's something else, windows, roofs, whatever. So we'll look at how we can put a program together. But there's no commingling of funds, so if things fall through the cracks, we've had some turnover in employees. Right now, there's one clerk. So when she's out of the office, that stuff's not getting done. So having a second clerk is very important. Then there's better oversight that things are getting generated and getting generated in the correct way. So we want to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks, as Mr. Heidick is stating that there's been some cases.
Thank you.
Did
Mrs.
that
Frye?
answer?
This is kind of to you, Bill, too. We collect the rental registration fees. Now, I think some of the landlords are of the opinion that that is their money to use for their improvements. Is it, or is it not? Or is it to hire people that can enforce the building codes for owner occupied and rental?
No, so the money is outlined in the legislation of how that money can be used. So you can't use it to hire people, but we have to, whenever we split wages between different funds, we have to make sure that if they're getting paid 30% out of this fund, they're actually working 30% for rentals, and that's what we get paid. So we have to make sure that we say that Bill Judge is getting paid these funds and he's actually doing that work. So it does go for rental use only. But it's already outlined in the legislation how it can be used. So rebate programs and things like that. So, technically it's their money in terms of, and I'm going to be asking for their input. What are they looking at? We're going to get a lot of opinions based on, I think, where the house is located. Older neighborhoods versus newer neighborhoods. Complexes versus single family homes. So.
I wanted to add too that I in addition to collecting the rental registration funds, I think our biggest problem is enforcement, like was said by Mr. Griffin. And I think that we have to make those rules tougher. I mean, you can't say that you have to cut your grass and then give them 2 weeks. I think it should be that it has to be done within 5 days or they're fined. And I think the fact that in the past, a lot of times they had so many layers to go through that by the time they got to the court, the judge would just fine them like $25 or whatever. And they know the game. So therefore, why should they comply with our demands or with the ordinances or whatever? It's easier for them to just, and cheaper for them just to ignore all the rules and go through the process and end up paying a very small fine. and not actually addressing the problem that we want them to address. So I would like for all of council to think of ways that we can make that process better and possibly pass ordinances or whatever to impose, the penalties and the fines and everything without getting to the court part, or without even assessing their property, because that isn't working either.
Yes, Mr. Hyde.
Thank you, Chair. This will be my last point. These are all great points. The only sticking point is, without this current piece of legislation, it's a fantasy world. We can sit there and talk about how we're gonna enforce, how we're gonna
Exactly.
bring people on. If this legislation does not pass, then everybody's going to get what they've always got for the past 11 years. Any grievances
Right.
over the past 11 years will continue for another 11 years, because without this, there can be no, all this conversation we have,
Is a
we
viewpoint.
might as well just be talking to the wall without the current legislation.
Right.
We can sit here and say we need more enforcement, okay? Where are we gonna get them? You know, we want renters, we want an inspector to drive down the street without a list of addresses and just look side to side. Who's gonna do it? We don't have it. So without this, then none of this can happen.
I just got a text message saying it's not online, if you want to double check.
No, Mrs. Miller, who had her hand up?
No, is it online? We might be down, I just got a text message.
Oh.
Is it live still?
Yeah, we're still live.
Is it live?
Yeah, it's live and there's 2 people watching.
Okay, I apologize, I interrupted you, let me share last time.
That was my final point though.
Okay,
Sorry,
thank you. That is true. You know, we do have quite a few ordinances on the books, but we can't enforce some of those. And that's the problem. Don't pass ordinances if we don't have a plan to enforce them. And Mrs. Miller?
First of all, I want to say I support any additional work that council wants to do and the mayor has worked on in enhancing the rental registration process. But I want to caution everyone to stop using anecdotal scenarios that you're really not that familiar with. I'm there every day, my staff is there every day. People are not going to court. They're not getting their due process, which landlords, tenants, and citizens of the United States are entitled to. So when we give tickets to people in America, you get to come to court. That's what you get to do in America. And so they are exercising the rights that they have as Americans. Now, we might not like that, but that's what happens. So when you say things like they just get a $25 fine, well, they do get a $25 fine, but they also get court costs. Does anybody know what court costs are in the city of Barberton? Well, they're far, far higher than $25. So any landlord who can do math would know that it's gonna cost him or her a lot more money to pay that ticket than to mow the lawn. Because I don't think that they're paying $145 to mow a lawn in Barberton, right? So they're not doing it because it's cheaper to pay a fine. They're not doing it for a million reasons. I don't know what those reasons are, but it's not because they're only paying $25. Because it's not $25, it's $25 in court costs, which rounds up to be about $150. So those stories aren't actually factual. And you need to ask those questions so you fully understand what happens in court. And I can tell you that no one's asked me any of those questions. So I 100% support reforming any of those issues because I deal with them and my staff deals with them every single day. But that is not what's happening. And landlords in this city are entitled to that due process, and so are tenants, and so are all of you when you get cited for court.
Thank you, Mrs. Miller. I have no miscellaneous discussion. Any miscellaneous discussion? No? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Greer, second.
I'll second.
Mrs. Colburn, and we are adjourned at 6:45.
Mrs. DeBevick?
Thank you. I just want to make a comment. I'm actually leaving the meeting. I am disappointed that we did not put in place something to meet virtually this evening. We've had 2 cases of COVID here. That's 20% of us. It's 5 days and 4 days until Christmas. I actually lost a really dear friend today to COVID who's younger than me. And I don't necessarily know that it's safe for us to be meeting here tonight. So for that reason, I'm not staying. I sent an email, last Tuesday expressing concern, and here we all sit. And so I'm respectfully leaving, and I didn't want to just get up in the middle of the meeting.
Can you, let us know who else might be COVID that might be in danger?
Well, no, I don't know, no, I don't know. I know that we've had 2 cases amongst us, and, you know, as a result of that, but I'm not gonna disclose any information. I'm just saying that my kids won't come home for Christmas if I stay in this room right now, because this is not responsible. There is technology available for us to do our business outside of this room. And we've had 9.5 months to figure it out. And yet, here we sit. And I said my piece.
How will your vote? Can she vote for stuff now?
I
or-
guess I can't vote because
You gotta be here.
I respect your decision. Thank you.
I apologize.
No reason to apologize.
So, this is virtual.
If we can figure out a way.
It's not a big deal.
She goes,
We had 9.5 months to figure it out.
she goes home.
Happy holidays. Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas.
Is anybody else feel that way now?
This will probably be our last meeting, we'll all be here. We're working on getting iPads, Mayor and I are working on Zoom, and, so this should be the last meeting where we're all meeting here, so.
Mr. President,
Yes?
I just dropped in shortly to say, I understood there might be some questions about the liquor transfer, and that's why I stopped in today. Were there any questions?
I never got any. Anybody?
I do have a question, Mr. President. Thank you. The question about the process is, the objection letter that is sent out generally for any liquor objection is signed by the council clerk. Her name is at the bottom of it. Does that mean that council members as a body, a legislative body, has agreed with that, or is she just the signing person to send out that?
It just means that someone has objected, and she's returning the objection.
Okay.
Yeah.
On behalf of council as a legislative body, or just?
No, the statute requires that the notice of application or transfer be sent to the legislative body. Otherwise, if it was just sent to the mayor's office, for example, council would never know that an application was received. So the state law requires it be sent to the legislative body.
Okay, just to clarify that does not, just because the council clerk's name is on the bottom of that and is the one that sends it out, does not mean that council itself objects, the legislative body objects.
No, you did, council could object or not object. But in this instance, we didn't ask council because the mayor or the chief objected. And so she returned it based on that objection. And this would not be the first time. This, I think, is the second time at that address, and it's definitely probably the 5th objection we filed since I've been here.
Yeah, it was a general question about the objection process, because I did see that our council clerk's name was at the bottom of it. She was the one that sent the letter. She was the one, I didn't know, because she works for us, so I just wanted to make sure that she wasn't signing her name on behalf of us to push that through without, because if that's the case, then wouldn't we be privy to the information that we're signing off on?
We were, she.
I haven't seen no objection letter or
She-
reasons.
She told us that she had a letter for a license, and there was one objection. She said that to us, that there was one objection, and that's what she said. She didn't say we objected, but that she had
That
received.
letter says we,
If I may,
her being the writer.
if I may, isn't the clerk's name at the bottom just to signify that she did notify the legislative body of the, isn't that the whole?
Yeah, that's.
The only reason she signs the body is to make sure that she notified.
Yeah, I guess
That's
I'm confused, this has occurred multiple times, and it occurred within the last year and a half,
Well,
and the exact same scenario played out.
but we've had 2 emails read before us that indicating that we voted against it, and we did not.
Well, you absolutely did not, of course,
Right.
and you know that you did, right?
We know we
Right.
did, yes.
Right, but the clerk's just stamping that, verifying that she read it to us. That's,
Right, and then an
Correct.
objection was received.
right, that's the only reason she has in the whole thing is
Yeah.
to ensure that it was read to us.
Because under the statute, the notice has to come to the legislative
Right.
authority of the body. That's the requirement.
Okay.
She's just stamping she did her job.
No,
That she reported it to the legislative body and that an objection was received.
Right.
Yes.
Are we allowed to know what the objection was about,
No,
Our names on
Ms. Miller?
Wait, I can't,
I'm
two
sorry,
people
we
said
want to
something.
know why he objected, the chief? The reasoning for it?
No, it'll be at the hearing.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, we'll continue with our committee meetings. Next up is Finance and Personnel with Mrs. Fry.
Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Ms. Miller.
Thank you.
Hi, it is, 6:53, Monday, December the 21st. We are in the Active Adult Center, and, we are beginning the meeting for Finance and Personnel. All members, with the exception of Mrs. DeBevick, are present, as well as all council people and guests as noted on my meeting agenda. The topics for discussion for tonight are that we do not have any requests for legislation, but we do have 3 pieces of current legislation. The first is ordinance number 160, 2020, which is titled Appropriation Fire Department. This legislation was referred to finance by safety, and it is the appropriation is in the amount of $2,846.43. And this is from the unappropriated item of the general fund to the fire department operating budget. This money was from a grant for the fire department for the purchase of PPE for EMS workers. Any questions about this piece of legislation? Okay. The second ordinance on the agenda tonight is number 163, 2020, and it is titled Year-End Appropriations Amendments. This particular ordinance is one that is done at the end of each year, and we appropriate funds into the budget for the beginning of 2021. And it basically is in the amount of a quarter of what that budget will normally be. Are there any questions about this piece of legislation? All right, the third piece of legislation we'll be voting on tonight is ordinance number 164-2020. And the title is 2021 Temporary Budget. And this is the temporary budget to start the year 2021. And this is an ordinance that is passed each year at this time as well. Are there any questions about this piece of legislation? Okay, thank you. Now I can open it up for any miscellaneous discussion if anyone has any questions or comments. Mr. Heidig?
Thank you, Chair. I just have a couple. Lisa McLean, I think she just stepped out there, but I wanted to thank her at the end of the year. You know, she'll be gone, and as the Chair of the Parks and City Property, she's been a tremendous asset to me through emails, through communications, and I'm gonna miss her for the next year. The other one is, I can't say enough that I'm going to miss Renee being the clerk, but I welcome our new clerk. What the body doesn't know is the first meeting that I was seated was December 11th. It was a Wednesday, and it was an emergency meeting. My papers were in front of me. She had more notes than I could describe right now, what I say, when I do, how I do things, and I kept those just because she was right there to make sure that I didn't have to look around and somebody poke me with a stick or something. But nobody knew that, but I wanted to make sure everybody knew that. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Heidig. Anyone else? Mr. Jaber?
Do we have a new Parks Director named yet, or who decided that?
What's that?
The Parks Director, who's taking her position?
Parks Commission,
Have they decided
just
that
like
yet?
the Planning Commission. I don't know, I haven't,
Has anybody heard
chair,
anything?
maybe the chair of the parks.
I was not notified.
There is a new parks director, that person has not started yet.
Mr. Bob?
The new Parks Director's name is Don Patterson. I interviewed him. There will be a profile in this week's Herald.
Don Patterson?
Yes.
Thank you. Can I ask another question? How did he know that and you didn't know that?
I didn't know.
Oh, you did?
You asked.
Yeah.
That's not a good thing. Thank you.
Okay, that's the end of our committee meeting.
I adjourn.
Okay.
All right, hearing no other comments, do I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, motion made by Mrs. Angela and seconded by Mr. Medges. And we are adjourned at 6:58.
Thanks, Bob, appreciate it.
Okay, we'll take 10 minutes.
I do too.
Yeah.
It says that there's two, but I can't find it. You can't find it.